Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the suggestions passed to the devs for March 2024 once again. This time we're having a look at the naval part. There isn't a ton of them, and a few have actually been passed before. It's kind of cool now, because they actually put in them that they were previously passed for consideration, but not all of them, as we've seen in the past. Anyway, let's get into these naval options and see what is available. The first one was passed to developers in August of 2022, and it is the Hibiki, or the Verniy, depending on which year you are looking at it in. Basically, this is a Japanese destroyer. It was a Japanese Akatsuki class destroyer that was in the Japanese Navy from 1933 to 1947. It had a bunch of nicknames such as the Unsinkable Ship, the Phoenix, and also the destroyer having the destiny to survive the war. What a fantastic name. And basically, during the war, it had access to 6 127mm guns, also 22 25mm AA guns, then 10 13mm AA guns, 9 torpedo tubes, and 36 depth charges at the same time. Near the end of the war, Japan knew that they were losing, and seeing as the US was steaming across the ocean towards Japan, they were demilitarizing and dismantling things so when Japan would fall to the Allies, they would not be able to reuse the shipyards and also the ships in them, which included cutting apart towers, removing parts of armor plating, and also many other things. When the Hibiki was handed over to the USSR as a prize of war, it was given a new name, which was the Verniy. Initially, when the USSR received Hibiki, they wanted to fit a new armament to it, but unfortunately, it didn't exactly fit properly. They wanted 6 130mm guns, 7 25mm guns, and also 4 to 6 12.7mm guns, and 6 533mm torpedo tubes. Basically, they didn't seem to fully complete that because of the issues with the turret, and also they didn't really swap out the engine or do too much else. So while in USSR service, the Verniy was used in the South Pacific Fleet as part of the 5th Naval Division, and also was later renamed the Decabrist on the 5th of July 1948, and retired from active service in 1953. Verniy, in between being target practice and then being renamed, acted as a barracks. Eventually, in the 1970s, she was used as a target practice and sunk. Hibiki is currently an accessible diving spot near Karamzina Island near Vladivostok. You know what's hilarious? They also passed another article which has already been passed to developers in March of 2023, so literally just a year ago. This stuff has been going on for years, and there is so many other articles they could add. But the funniest thing is the fact that this is just the Hibiki again, the Akatsuki class destroyer, the one we just talked about. So it just got passed in its Russian kind of refit, and also just it as well. So both articles are just copied from each other and were passed in the past at different times. Literally just copy and pasted. For the French, we have the Jean Bart. During the 1930s, the French Navy was trying to find a way to rearm its fleet to compete with the rest of the major European powers. The Regia Marina, which felt threatened by the appearance of the new Dunkirk-class battleships, launched the construction of new warships, surpassing this class in every way, the Littorio class. The French answer was immediate, and a few days after the specs of the Littorio class were officially revealed, the French Navy started working on a new battleship class, which would eventually become the Richelieu class. When the war broke out, battleship Jean Bart wasn't finished. Although it had been launched, it was far from operational, not even seaworthy. Construction was prioritized during the Phony War, but even that wasn't enough, and when the Battle of France started, Jean Bart was more or less 50% finished. The catastrophic turn of events of the war forced the sailors and workers to work tirelessly for 2 weeks straight, almost without sleeping, just to get the ship to be seaworthy. And so, with the Germans being a few hours away from Jean Bart's dockyard at Saint-Nazaire, the ship set sail on the 19th of June 1940. Harassed by German Heinkel He-111 bombers, it managed to get out of the river and in the open sea with minimal damage. Joined by several brand new destroyers of the Hardy class, the ship fled to Casablanca after refusing to go to the UK. The next 2 years were uneventful, until Operation Torch and the end of the Vichy regime. The Allies launched an attack on Casablanca, where Jean Bart was stationed. To their surprise, even though the ship was unfinished, its only working turrets started firing, grazing the US warships. It was then intensely shelled, most notably by USS Massachusetts, a brand new US battleship, and bombed by US aviation. Ironically, its half-finished state was what saved the ship, since, being a mostly empty shell, most of the shots went straight through the ship without any ammo being blown up. After the war, the French Navy considered converting the ship into an aircraft carrier, but given the cost, they decided to finish the ship with more modern equipment. Brought back in France in 1945, it was then finished according to plans in 1949, then massively modernized in 1951, transforming the 152mm secondaries into dual-purpose guns, adding a great amount of AA fire as well, and also a vast array of radars and combat centers. After several days, it was admitted into service in 1955, and a year later, it participated in the Suez Crisis, where it fired its last 380mm shells. After that, it was considered to convert it into a missile ship, but the idea was ultimately abandoned, and the ship was decommissioned, then scrapped in 1970. This vehicle had access to 8 380mm cannons in 2 sets of quad mounts, then also 9 152mm cannons too in 3 triple mounts, 24 100mm AA cannons in dual mounts, and 28 57mm AA cannons in 14 dual mounts too. Would be a pretty fun machine to see. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.